Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're jumping right into a really fascinating alternate timeline pulled directly from our source material. We're looking at a completely pivotal moment in television history to see how literally one single choice could rewrite the destinies of 6 iconic characters. If you love geeking out over the mechanics of a story, well, you're definitely in the right place. Let's get into it. Okay, let's dive into this. We're looking at the ultimate butterfly effect question here. What if Ross Geller never got on that plane back to New York? Just remember the context for a second. Ross's trip to London was, supposed to be this huge celebration of love. But as we all know, it instantly became one of the most painful moments of his entire life when he accidentally said Rachel's name at the altar instead of Emily's. Ouch. The trust was just completely shattered. So, our source material asks us to pause right at that absolute moment of devastation and ask, what actually happens if Ross just stays in London, instead of retreating back to a safety net?
Part 1. The London Pivot.
So, in the reality we all know, Ross returns to New York completely heartbroken. But think about what New York actually represents to him in that exact moment. It's a city packed to the brim with painful memories. Literally every apartment, every coffee shop, every single museum is this glaring reminder of what he just lost. But what if he stays in London for a fresh start? It's a really bold decision, sure, but logically, it makes a ton of sense. He's already a highly respected paleontologist, and London is home to some amazing world-class institutions. Professionally speaking, it's just a massive opportunity for him to hit the reset button.
But how does he actually pull this off? Well, rebuilding Ross kind of comes down to 3 steps. Step 1 is the most immediate benefit, escaping that exhausting emotional cycle of past relationships. I mean, he has always struggled to let go of the past, whether we're talking about Carol, Rachel, or Emily. Step 2 grounds him professionally. Joining the ranks at a place like London's Natural History Museum gives his life immediate focus and a real sense of purpose. And then step 3, which is probably the hardest but absolutely crucial, growing independently. For years, Ross has leaned heavily on his friends. Living thousands of miles away, completely stepping out of that safety net, would finally force him to become self-reliant. It would force him to break those old toxic emotional cycles once and for all.
Let's move to part 2 and see how this builds across the ocean, the New York ripple.
So let's look at the immediate effects on the remaining 5. Without Ross nearby, obviously, Monica is going to deeply miss her brother. But surprisingly, this absence might actually accelerate her bond with Chandler. You see, their relationship was already building on a foundation of emotional support, so not having her brother around could strengthen their reliance on each other much earlier on. Phoebe? Well, being the free spirit she is, she'd probably adapt the quickest. She'd embrace the change, probably encouraging the whole group to just accept this new chapter. But for Joey, the dynamic shifts in a much sadder way. He loses one of his absolute closest friends.
And really think about what that means in practical terms for Joey. No disastrous leather pants dates. No screaming pivot at a couch wedged in a tiny staircase. There's no way around it. Joey completely misses out on those incredibly awkward but hilarious adventures. And while Joey's friendship with Chandler would definitely grow stronger, our source points out something really interesting. Joey actually loses crucial opportunities to mature. So much of his unexpected growth came directly from navigating those bizarre, out-of-nowhere moments with Ross. And in this timeline, they simply wouldn't happen.
Which brings us to the emotional core, part 3, the Rachel reality. This is how distance actually works in the real world, right? In month 1, they probably all think he just needs a little time away. They're exchanging phone calls, catching up. But by year 1, maybe that turns into just occasional letters. By year 3, they are completely immersed in their own separate careers. And by year 10, their massive, dramatic, sweeping, on-again, off-again romance has really just slowly faded into a treasured memory. Without that constant physical proximity, running into each other every single day, the unfinished story actually finds a really quiet, natural conclusion. And this brilliantly illustrates their diversion paths. Over in New York, Rachel just keeps building her fashion career. She's gaining massive confidence at Bloomingdale's and Ralph Lauren, but most importantly, without Ross constantly entering and exiting her life, she avoids these huge emotional setbacks that always seem to complicate her personal growth. Meanwhile, over in the UK, Ross establishes himself. He lets his work become his primary focus. He meets new colleagues, new friends, and honestly, he finally has the chance to build a healthy relationship entirely unburdened by his really complicated New York past.
But all of this leads us to part 4, the lost futures.
So the crucial point is, the logical outcome of this timeline leads to a truly shocking realization. Emma would never be born. Because that happened years after Ross returned to New York, their eventual reunion simply never takes place. That one single decision at a London airport completely erases the next generation of their family from this timeline. It's a massive, massive heavy ripple effect.
And the missing milestones just keep piling up. Ross wouldn't just be missing from Emma's life, he is permanently absent from the group's biggest life events. Think about Monica and Chandler's wedding. It would feel entirely different without Ross there to play his important emotional roles. The entire narrative focus of those later years completely shifts. Instead of all that romantic tension and will they, won't they drama, the story would focus strictly on 5 friends navigating the realities of adulthood. And there'd be this permanent, super noticeable gap right where their 6th member used to be.
Let's wrap things up with part 5, the price of independence. Now, what's really interesting about this is the ultimate irony of the scenario. It all comes down to cost. For Ross and Rachel, the alternate outcome is that they actually live much healthier, more independent lives. They finally break those toxic cycles, but the cost? Well, it's the complete loss of their epic romance. And for the wider group, they likely enjoy a much more drama-free adulthood. But again, the cost is the loss of those deep traditions, the shared holidays, the everyday coffees. They become happier individuals, maybe, but it comes at the cost of the collective magic they all shared.
I absolutely love this quote, drawn from our source material. It says, "Sometimes the biggest moments in life aren't the dramatic ones. They're the quiet decisions we almost don't notice." It wasn't the dramatic wrong name at the altar that finalized his destiny, right? Actually, scratch that. It was the quiet choice afterward of whether or not to use a plane ticket home. One quiet choice to stay instead of leave literally shapes an entirely new destiny for 6 different people.
Which leaves us with this final, kind of profound question to ponder. Is individual happiness really worth losing your found family? The central theme of this group was always that no matter how messy life gets, the people who truly matter find their way back to each other. By staying in London, Ross finds professional success and, yeah, perhaps some emotional peace, but he entirely breaks that central theme. So, would it have been worth it? Take a moment to really think about that. Thanks for joining this explainer, guys, and make sure to stick around for our next one, where we're going to continue to uncover the hidden layers of the stories we think we know so well.